Hello friends, welcome back to the channel. Today's story is about a poor delivery boy who was humiliated because of his status, but years later, fate turned the tables in a way no one could have imagined. So stay with me till the end because this story has a lesson you'll never forget. In the heart of Chicago, 23-year-old Ethan Carter worked as a delivery boy. Every day he rode his old motorcycle through the busy streets, delivering packages and food to make enough money to support his sick mother. Life had never been easy for Ethan. His father had passed away when he was just 14, leaving him with responsibilities far beyond his age. Despite the hardships, Ethan never complained. He believed that honesty and hard work would eventually change his destiny. One rainy evening, Ethan received an urgent order to deliver documents to Harrison Technologies, one of the biggest companies in the city. As he entered the luxurious building, people in expensive suits walked past him without even looking in his direction. While waiting near the reception desk, Ethan accidentally bumped into a young woman carrying coffee. The cup slipped from her hand, spilling coffee on her expensive dress. The woman immediately became furious. She was Olivia Harrison, the daughter of billionaire businessman Richard Harrison and future CEO of Harrison Technologies. "Watch where you're going," she shouted angrily. "I'm so sorry, ma'am," Ethan apologized. But Olivia wasn't interested in listening. She looked at Ethan's worn-out clothes and old helmet and smirked. "People like you should stay outside. Delivery boys don't belong here." Everyone in the lobby fell silent. Some employees even laughed. Those words pierced Ethan's heart, but instead of arguing, he quietly lowered his head and walked away. Little did Olivia know that this humiliation would become the turning point of Ethan Carter's life. Friends, if you're enjoying this emotional story, don't forget to like, subscribe, share, and comment. Your support motivates us to bring more inspiring stories every day. That night, Ethan sat beside his mother's hospital bed. His mother noticed the sadness in his eyes. "What happened, son?" she asked softly. Ethan forced a smile. "Nothing, Mom, just another long day." But deep inside, he made a promise to himself. One day, he would prove that a person's value is not measured by their clothes or job. And that promise would soon change everything. The next morning, Ethan woke up with a different mindset. He had spent years working day and night just to survive. But after the humiliation at Harrison Technologies, something inside him had changed. He no longer wanted to merely survive. He wanted to build a future. During his delivery shifts, Ethan started listening to business podcasts and online lectures. Every spare minute became a learning opportunity. At night, after visiting his mother in the hospital, he studied marketing, technology, and entrepreneurship. Months passed. Then, one day, tragedy struck. Ethan's mother passed away peacefully in her sleep. Her final words remained etched in his heart forever. "Promise me one thing, Ethan. Never let bitterness destroy your kindness. Success means nothing if you lose your humanity." Her death shattered him. For weeks he felt lost, but eventually he remembered the promise he had made to her. Instead of giving up, Ethan poured all his pain into his dreams. He sold his motorcycle and used every dollar he had saved to launch a small logistics startup from a tiny rented room. People laughed at him. Friends told him he was crazy. Even banks rejected his loan applications, but Ethan refused to quit. He worked 18 hours a day. He personally packed orders, answered customer calls, and drove delivery vehicles himself. Slowly, customers started noticing something different. His company wasn't just fast, it treated every customer with respect. Within 3 years, the startup expanded across several states. Investors started approaching him. News channels began talking about the young entrepreneur who had risen from poverty. But Ethan remained humble. He never forgot where he came from. Meanwhile, things were changing inside Harrison Technologies. Richard Harrison had retired due to health issues, leaving Olivia Harrison in charge. Unfortunately, Olivia lacked experience. Her arrogance had created enemies within the company. Bad decisions and poor leadership caused huge losses. Competitors took advantage. Employees resigned. Investors began pulling out. Within a few years, Harrison Technologies was drowning in debt. For the first time in her life, Olivia faced something she had never experienced before: failure. The woman who once looked down on others now found herself desperately trying to save the company built by her father. One evening, the financial advisors delivered shocking news. There is only one company interested in buying Harrison Technologies. Olivia looked up with hope. "Who is it?" she asked. The room fell silent. Then one of the advisors nervously handed her a file. Olivia opened it, and the moment she saw the name written on the first page, her face turned pale, because the company making the offer belonged to none other than Ethan Carter, the same delivery boy she had insulted years ago. And what happened next would leave the entire business world speechless. Olivia stared at the file in disbelief. Her hands trembled. "This can't be possible," she whispered. But the numbers didn't lie. Carter Global Logistics, now valued at billions of dollars, had officially offered to acquire Harrison Technologies, the same company founded by Ethan Carter, the same delivery boy she had humiliated years ago. For several minutes, Olivia sat silently. Memories of that rainy evening flooded back into her mind. The spilled coffee, the laughter in the lobby, and the cruel words she had spoken. For the first time in her life, she felt ashamed. Meanwhile, Ethan sat calmly in his office, overlooking downtown Chicago. Success had changed his life, but it had never changed his character. He still remembered his mother's final advice: never let bitterness destroy your kindness. His board members were excited about the acquisition. "Harrison Technologies is weak," one executive said. "We can shut it down, fire half the staff, and sell its assets for a huge profit." Another executive nodded. "This is the perfect opportunity to destroy the company." But Ethan shook his head. No. Everyone looked at him in surprise. "We're not buying Harrison Technologies to destroy it. We're buying it to save it." The room fell silent. A few days later, Olivia arrived at Carter Global's headquarters for the final meeting. As she stepped into the luxurious office, her heart raced. And then she saw him, Ethan Carter, wearing an elegant suit, confident, successful. Yet the kindness in his eyes remained unchanged. Olivia lowered her head. Tears filled her eyes. "I'm sorry," she said softly. "I was arrogant. I judged you because of your job. I humiliated you in front of everyone." Ethan looked at her quietly. Then, after a few moments, he smiled gently. "We all make mistakes, Olivia. What matters is whether we learn from them." Olivia couldn't believe what she was hearing. After everything she had done, Ethan wasn't seeking revenge. He wasn't trying to humiliate her. Instead, he chose compassion.
That day, the acquisition agreement was signed. But instead of removing employees, Ethan protected every job. He invested millions into rebuilding the company. Workers who had feared losing everything celebrated with tears of joy. News of Ethan's decision spread across America. Television channels called it one of the most inspiring business stories of the decade. People praised not only his success, but his humanity. And just when the world thought the story had reached its end, something unexpected happened. A month later, Ethan received a mysterious package. Inside was an old photograph and a handwritten letter that would reveal a secret neither he nor Olivia had ever known. A secret that connected their families decades before they were even born. And after reading that letter, Ethan was left completely speechless.
Hello, friends. Welcome back. What happened next changed not only Ethan Carter's life, but also Olivia Harrison's forever. A month after acquiring Harrison Technologies, Ethan was working late in his office when his assistant entered the room holding a small package. "Mr. Carter, this arrived for you," she said. "There is no sender's name." Ethan looked surprised. At that hour, he wasn't expecting anything. After thanking his assistant, he carefully opened the package. Inside, he discovered an old black and white photograph. The picture looked at least 40 years old. Two young men stood side by side, smiling brightly at the camera. One of them was unmistakably Richard Harrison, but the other man... Ethan froze.
His heart skipped a beat. The man looked exactly like his late father, Michael Carter. Beneath the photograph lay a folded handwritten letter. The handwriting appeared old and slightly faded. As Ethan slowly unfolded the paper, he noticed the signature at the bottom, Richard Harrison. Curious and confused, Ethan began reading, and with every line he read, his eyes widened. Decades ago, Richard Harrison and Michael Carter had been inseparable. They had grown up together, they had struggled together, and they had shared one dream: to build a technology company that would change the world. But life had different plans. Richard eventually moved to Chicago and started Harrison Technologies. Meanwhile, Michael chose a different path. He remained behind and devoted his life to his wife and children. Years passed. Success came to Richard, but despite becoming a billionaire, he never forgot his closest friend. According to the letter, Richard had spent years trying to find Michael. Unfortunately, before he succeeded, Michael Carter had already passed away. Richard's words revealed a pain he had carried for decades. "I lost my best friend.
"I lost my brother." Near the end of the letter, one sentence made Ethan stop breathing for a moment. "If fate ever brings our children together, I hope they treat each other as family." Tears filled Ethan's eyes. His father had never talked much about his younger years. Those memories had gone with him. But somehow, fate fulfilled the wish of two friends separated by time. Early the next morning, Ethan drove to Richard Harrison's estate. The elderly billionaire had retired years earlier because of health issues. His once powerful presence had been replaced by the quiet life of an old man seeking peace. When Richard opened the front door and saw the photograph in Ethan's hands, tears instantly appeared in his eyes. "My God," he whispered, "you found it." For several moments, neither man spoke. Then Richard embraced Ethan tightly. His voice trembled. "I searched for your father for years. He wasn't just my friend. He was my brother." Emotion filled Ethan's eyes. "My father would have been happy to hear that." Richard slowly wiped away his tears. "I failed him, Ethan. I became successful, but I couldn't find the one person who stood beside me when I had nothing." But Ethan gently shook his head. "No, sir. Life simply took both of you in different directions." For hours, Richard shared stories Ethan had never heard before. Stories of hardship, stories of dreams, stories of friendship. And one story shocked Ethan more than anything. Many years ago, Richard had nearly died in a terrible car accident, and it was Michael Carter who had risked his own life to save him. Without Michael Carter, Richard Harrison would never have lived long enough to create Harrison Technologies. As Richard told the story, tears rolled down his cheeks. He gave me my life, and I never got the chance to thank him." At that moment, Ethan realized something. His father had always been a hero, not because he was rich, not because he was famous, but because of the goodness in his heart. Meanwhile, Olivia Harrison received a call from her father. Concerned, she rushed to his home. But when she entered the living room, she stopped in shock. There sat Ethan Carter beside Richard Harrison. The two men were laughing together while looking through old photographs. Seeing them together filled Olivia's heart with guilt once again, and she had no idea that the truth she was about to hear would change everything she believed about Ethan Carter forever. As Olivia stood frozen near the doorway, Richard Harrison immediately noticed the guilt in her eyes. He looked at his daughter and let out a deep sigh. "Olivia," he said softly, "do you know who Ethan truly is?" Olivia lowered her head. "The man I once judged." Richard slowly shook his head. "No. He is the son of the man who saved my life." Olivia's eyes widened in disbelief. "What?" Richard nodded. Then, with tears forming in his eyes, he told her the entire story. He spoke about his friendship with Michael Carter. He spoke about the dreams they once shared. And finally, he revealed how Michael had risked his own life during a terrible accident to save Richard's life. Without Michael Carter, there would have been no Harrison Technologies, no fortune, no empire, and perhaps no Olivia Harrison. By the time Richard finished speaking, tears were streaming on Olivia's face. She couldn't believe what she had just heard. Years ago, she had humiliated the son of the very man who had saved her father's life. She looked toward Ethan with regret and shame. "I don't deserve your kindness," she said quietly. "After everything I did, after the way I treated you, you've shown me more humanity than I ever showed you." Ethan smiled gently. Then he remembered his mother's final words. "My mother taught me something before she died. Never let bitterness destroy your kindness." And I believe she was right. For the first time in her life, Olivia truly understood the meaning of humility. Over the following months, Ethan and Olivia worked side by side to rebuild Harrison Technologies. Employees who had once feared losing their jobs finally had hope again. Under Ethan's leadership and Olivia's dedication, the company slowly began to recover. But this time, things were different. Olivia herself had changed. She no longer cared about status. She treated everyone with respect, from executives to janitors, from managers to delivery workers. She had learned a lesson that money could never teach. One afternoon, while visiting the company lobby, Olivia noticed a nervous young delivery boy carrying several packages. Suddenly, he tripped. Important files scattered across the floor. The young man looked terrified. "I'm so sorry, ma'am," he said nervously. But instead of anger, Olivia smiled warmly.
"It's okay. Accidents happen." Then she knelt down and helped him gather the papers. The young delivery boy looked completely surprised, and in that moment, Olivia remembered herself years ago. But this time, she chose kindness. From a distance, Ethan watched everything with a smile. People can change, and perhaps that was life's greatest miracle. 2 years later, Carter Global and Harrison Technologies had become stronger than ever. Together, they employed thousands of people across America, but success had not made Ethan forget his past. Instead of chasing luxury, he focused on helping others. He created scholarship programs for underprivileged students. He funded hospitals. He donated millions to charities. And he helped struggling families build better lives. People across the country began to admire him, not because he was wealthy, but because he remained humble. One evening, Richard Harrison invited Ethan and Olivia to dinner. As they sat together laughing and sharing stories, Richard smiled happily. "This," he said, "this is exactly what your fathers would have wanted. Family, friendship, and forgiveness." Months later, during a charity event, reporters surrounded Ethan. One journalist asked him a question. "Mr. Carter, after everything you achieved, what is the greatest lesson life has taught you?" The room fell silent. Ethan smiled, then he answered, "Never judge someone by their current situation, because today's delivery boy may become tomorrow's leader. And success means nothing if you lose your humanity along the way." His words spread across the nation. Millions of people were inspired, not because he'd become a billionaire, but because he had remained kind. Because in a world filled with pride, he chose forgiveness. In a world filled with hatred, he chose compassion. And in a world obsessed with status, he chose humanity. Years later, Forbes magazine featured Ethan Carter on its cover. Beneath his photograph were simple words: "The billionaire who never forgot where he came from." And somewhere in heaven, perhaps two old friends were smiling, Michael Carter and a younger Richard Harrison, because destiny had finally fulfilled the dream they once shared, not through money, not through power, but through kindness, through forgiveness, and through love. And that, friends, is the true meaning of success.